Wow, we have quite the story to break down today. We just received a leaked video from years back of one of Donald Trump's key cabinet members detailing their ideal torture methods for brown people, essentially. The reason why this clip is so damning is because the person in it is none other than Stephen Miller, Donald Trump's deputy chief of staff, and the person who is spearheading his current immigration policy. There are even theories that Stephen Miller is controlling the entire administration behind the scenes while Trump golfs and screams about Jeffrey Epstein every single day, but we do know for a fact Stephen Miller is spearheading the immigration policy. Some people call him a mastermind. I wouldn't say that. I would say he is a master at creating death traps or dangerous facilities where we keep people against their will, creating the most vile methods to hurt brown people who just want to move here for a better life. I want to break this down from the beginning, but let's just start here. I think it's important to talk about Alligator Auschwitz for a second. They call it Alligator Alcatraz, but it is a new detention center in Florida that has inhumane conditions, according to multiple critical sources. This reads, Venezuelan detainee alleges inhumane conditions at Alligator Alcatraz. They have us in cages like chickens, he said. A Venezuelan man who was recently detained said it was overcrowded, there was poor sanitation, and a lack of medical care. The Trump admin even bragged about propping up this entire facility in 2 weeks, which means they necessarily must have subverted a lot of the guidelines or protocols that you're generally supposed to have for any detention facility. Just know that Alligator Alcatraz has had report after report after report from Democratic politicians, from people inside, that the conditions are inhumane and borderline torturous. That is why I want to show you this clip of Stephen Miller, because he has been plotting this for decades. It seems like this is a core piece of who he is. He is a sick and twisted human being, and even Terry Moran pointed that out. Really quickly, I want to show you this clip of Stephen Miller repeating Nazi rhetoric point by point. One line from Julius Streicher's Nazi newspaper summarized this idea bluntly. This is a Nazi newspaper from almost 100 years ago. Quote, without the Jew, the German school would thrive. German children would not go hungry. Our hospitals would have room again. Let's listen to Stephen Miller using the same thing, the same line of wording, but just about immigrants.
Crime. And again, another example of how the city government of Los Angeles is waging a campaign of insurrection against the federal government. Let's be very clear. What would Los Angeles look like without illegal aliens? Here's what it would look like. You would be able to see a doctor in the emergency room right away, no wait time, no problem. Your kids would go to a public school that had more money than they know what to do with. Classrooms would be half the size. Students who had special needs would get all the attention that they needed. There would be no violent transnational gangs. There would be no cartels. There would be no Mexican mafia. There would be no Serranos.
Okay, that's enough, but you guys see the parallel. Without the Jew, the German school would thrive. Is Stephen Miller saying, number one, that half of hospitals are crowded by illegal immigrants? There's no reality in which that's true. Number two, that he wants to deport classrooms full of children if the children are illegal. But first of all, that is a lie. I can guarantee there is not a single classroom across the United States where half of the children in the classroom are somehow illegal. But secondly, even if we presuppose that that were true, you want to rip half of the students out of the classroom, students that are here to learn and better the country and, contribute and eventually become doctors, scientists, contribute to the research and development of medicine in America. Immigrants make our country better, especially people that move here at a young age, get ingrained in the U.S. education system, which is better in some areas, worse in other areas, and then go to college in the United States. Overall, this is straight just Nazi rhetoric, and you guys see exactly how. Now, this brings me to a tweet made by Terry Moran. He got fired for making this post. He got fired by ABC for writing. The thing about Stephen Miller is not that he is the brains behind Trumpism. Yes, he is one of the people who conceptualizes the impulse of the Trumpist policy and translates them into policy. But that's not what's interesting about Miller. It's not brains, it's bile. Miller is a man who is richly endowed with the capacity for hatred. He's a world-class hater. You can just see this by looking at him, because you can see that his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate. It satisfies him. Trump is a world-class hater, but his hatred is only a means to an end, and that end is his own glorification. So Trump's spiritual nourishment is his own ego, his glorification. That shouldn't be very controversial. But Stephen Miller, his nourishment is just pure hatred. And we can prove this by looking at this video of Stephen Miller in 2003, decades before he was the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, when he was still in high school. You know, this video was filmed in 2003. It's funny, while Stephen Miller was on the bus, Donald Trump was signing his name as pubic hair to a known predator. But Stephen Miller, on the bus in high school, talks about his ideal torture methods for brown people, essentially. And this, decades later, manifested into Alligator Auschwitz, or Alcatraz, whatever they want to call it. I don't know. But
the issue of the Iraqi civilians. I think that as many of them should survive as possible, because the goal of any military conflict is to kill as few people as possible. But as for Saddam Hussein and his henchmen, I think the ideal solution would be to cut off their fingers. I don't think it's necessary to kill them entirely. We're not a barbaric people. We respect life. Therefore, torture is the way to go, because tortured people can live. Torture is a celebration of life and human dignity. And we need to remember that as we enter these very dark and dangerous times in the next century.
his friends are laughing, but when he says torture is a celebration of life and human dignity, this dude wasn't joking. He wasn't.
And I only hope that many of my peers and people who will be leading this country will appreciate the value and respect that torture shows towards other cultures.
And that is where we land today. Does he think he's respecting other cultures? What a weird backwards logic. Jon Favreau said, Stephen Miller has been a sociopath for most of his life. Wild that ABC fired Terry Moran for simply stating that this person is a world-class hater. Terry Moran got fired for telling the truth. You know we're in a bad spot when he gets fired for telling the truth. What about this clip of Stephen Miller in high school screaming about how he's sick and tired to pick up the trash? This is another interesting one.
Am I the only one who is sick and tired of being told to pick up my trash? And we have plenty of janitors who are paid to do it for us.
This is so indicative of the current day conservative logic. Why would I pick up my trash when we have plenty of janitors to do it for us? It is the perfect example of not caring about anything surrounding you because you think other people can take care of it. But I guarantee if this dude actually had a bad experience in public with some sort of littering, he would have a different view. It's just absolutely absurd and a weird ideology that is now manifested years later in Alligator Alcatraz, which is what they call it. One more time, people are being put in cages like chickens. Quote, for us, the conditions are fatal. The facility has faced increased criticism over human rights, environmental impact, oversight, and the legality of commandeering protected Everglades land. But if the person spearheading this is Stephen Miller, the man who on the bus in high school said that he's okay with torture, in fact, he thinks it respects other cultures, then you can directly draw the line between that and how we ended up here. I'm going to leave it at that. Terry Moran should have never been fired. But it kind of reminds me of Stephen Colbert's show being canceled. A lot of these reporters or people are under the thumb of a larger entity, and I just want to use this to say we aren't. We are completely independent. There is nobody else on the planet, not one other person, that can dictate what I say, what I record, what topics I cover. I could go on here shirtless if I wanted to. Like, no one would stop me. I could do whatever the hell I want. So just know that whenever you're subscribing or commenting, you are supporting a completely independent channel, and I appreciate that. I'll see you all in the next video. I appreciate every single one of you, and peace out.